Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever seen a chess game so great that you applaud for both the players? In this game between two masters, his opponent in the audience actually applauded for our protagonist. This is a very popular chess game between Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky in the sixth game of the World Championship match in Reykjavik in 1972. So let's begin. Let me just switch the colors. So it's c4, e6. This is a less popular line of the French, which could potentially transpose into, I mean, not the French, the English that can transpose into the French. For example, c4, d5. Now we kind of have a Panov variation, which could occur after, not really a Panov. Well, not really, but it's a sort of French-esque variant we have here. Instead, we have a regular English-ready system, d5. This is one of the more common ways to play against these kind of setups. d4, knight f6. Now we're transposing into a sort of French Panov sort of thing. Accelerated Panov. Knight c3, bishop to e7. We have bishop to g5, castles, e3, h6. Now there's not a lot happening here. We have transposed into a sort of queen's gambit where sort of a semi-Slav, you could say, where it's not exactly optimal. Black will likely transpose into a triangle system with c6 and knight to d7. But for now, this isn't such a great system since the bishop is blocked, but in 1972, it was still a nice system. Bishop to h4, b6. We have the typical development of the bishop along this diagonal since white has not committed his bishop down here. Particularly in these types of systems where the bishop goes on f4 or g5, the bishop here will not go to g2 since it needs to monitor these squares near the queen. And essentially, the diagonal is usually all closed in a closed Catalan style. c5, knight takes d5. So this is kind of a counterintuitive decision since you don't really want to open up your your opponent's bishop, but it is actually a nice plan since his idea is to trade and basically take advantage of this weak c6 square. This is not seen in many games with these kind of ideas. Usually, you don't want to play c4 as a process of note. You could probably just continue with the regular bishop to e2 or e3, bishop to b7, and castles. And what you're trying to do is force black to open up his bishop. But you already have so much development that it's kind of not worth it. And you can jump your knight into the center. But this is still a viable system, though white is on the verge of risking a draw. I will move my microphone closer. Yeah, so takes, bishop takes e7. He wants to trade off. And now his essential goal is to play knight to e5 and play knight to c6. He risks some sort of attack, let's say like this. I mean, this is just very theoretical. This looks actually good, but it doesn't really accomplish much. Actually, black will gain an advantage, so you can't be that hasty. So let's say you play knight to e3 or f3, and maybe not that now. Like queen to e4, and now this pawn is pinned, and you might have to deal with some extra things. Though it's not exactly scary, so I can't really show anything vital, but The point is that white isn't castling yet, which is really risky. I would not recommend it. But he is taking advantage of this weak c6 square, which can be used in the future. Bishop to e6 is played instead. I don't consider this a good move. I would play like bishop to f5 and try to trade off this bishop because it is not of no particular use, though I risk and play something like c6 in the future, not now, to solidify this pawn structure, and I will defend this pawn with rook to c8. Or potentially c5 if it is possible. So we have, or bishop to g4 is interesting, though now you help white, technically. So bishop to e6 instead, I don't consider this such a good move. Queen to a4. c5, now we see this in action. Basically, Spassky's point with this move is that his bishop is not optimally placed, but it defends the d5 pawn so he can continue with c5. Queen to a4, c5. He's trying to break in the center and get rid of his c6 weakness. Queen to a3. This is a nice move. Bobby pins the pawn, and now it is going to be slightly hard and a challenge for who wins the pawn. But unluckily, Spassky has knight to d7 is also fine. Spassky has enough protection, and the pawn will not be captured, though now his pieces are kind of useless. He'll need some time to develop them, in which, yeah, and knight to d7 was probably better actually. Though bishop to b5 might be scary, but you can just play rook to c8 and you're fine. So instead we have bishop to b5 here, a6, kicking out the bishop. This is slightly hasty. There's I'm not sure if you want to do this now, but he wants to play knight to d7, b5, and try to launch a storm at Bobby on the queen side. dc5 instead, as Wuchen's rook. bc5 castles. So Bobby finally castles on the 16th move, which is definitely not recommended. This bishop is not hanging because this rook would be hanging. So instead, now we have rook to a7. Now Spassky is actually threatening the bishop, indeed. Bishop to e2, knight to d7. So Spassky's defending all his pawns in position, though there's the a6 weakness, and his rooks are kind of not cornered as well. Knight to d4. He's vitally relying on this pin right here. This is pinned as well as this. So to get out of both those pins, Spassky defends his queen as well as his rook. So now he's actually threatening the knight. Knight takes e6, trading off the knight. I don't think this is such a good move. I won't be hasty with this move. But I guess you have to make a decision with the knight. Potentially knight to b5 is better. And I mean, this knight isn't doing really anything now, but after like rook here, I guess you could reroute the knight. Though also knight to f3 is probably fine too. But instead he actually takes, which I don't think is actually the best, because now black has solidified his pawn center completely. But now he plays this interesting e4 move. And now, actually, he's breaking up this pawn center. This is a really important concept in these type of minor piece endgames. I don't consider this an endgame, but he is applying tons of pressure. Usually what people do is that they let this pressure go, play something like natural, and then black is able to solidify with like c4, and now black is actually completely fine. So you need to really take the initiative. So e4 is therefore the best move. Now if he captures, there's bishop to c4 or bishop to g4, and the pawn is going to be under struggles, and quintus e3 is coming in, and these pawns are getting destroyed. So you would rather not take and be taken, actually. That's an important thing. People usually snap take, but in this case, in many cases, you actually want to be taken so that your pawn structure doesn't take any damage. We have d4. This is a bit committal. I wouldn't play like this, but Spassky is saying, okay, I get that you're going to try to pressure me on this pawn, but I now have a passed pawn. A passed pawn is where now white doesn't have any pawns to prevent this pawn's passing. So Spassky now either needs to blockade this pawn or just let it go for now because there's no defending the pawn. I would probably play bishop to c4 or like rook to e1. I mean, any move is fine here, but he goes f4. Basically, he's trying to take advantage of everything. Look how much pressure Fischer is putting on Spassky. This pawn is going to be under pressure. The passed pawn has no future, and this queen is now going to be targeted. He's using everything he has to his advantage. Queen to e7, but now he reactivates this pin, so Fischer prevents any attack, and now we'll look to push forward with f5 and create his own pass pawn. Though it'll be an isolated pass pawn, it's still a good asset to his position. So Fischer isn't technically winning already, but he has huge amounts of pressure, and Spassky's pieces aren't coordinated. Rook to b8. Spassky unpins, but he reduces his defenses, and now this knight has to stay on d7 to protect this pawn, which is, well, an advantage for Fischer since Spassky isn't really making any progress. He's taking the semi-open file. Bishop to c4, we see it now. He will look to strike at this pinned pawn with f5 and eternally win it. And there is no really good way Spassky can prevent this. Although I would like to see knight to f8 potentially to protect this pawn, f5 is still a crushing blow. The engine here recommends rook to b5, which is an interesting move. And white's point is black's point is that this isn't really such a threat actually. Though I would be really scared if I saw this. And Spassky agrees with my opinion, but I guess it's not needed to take any action. I don't think this is such a good move. You force the king back, and you would rather have your king more active and come to f7, I imagine, when this rook gets off this file, of course. But we see king to h8, queen to h3. Now, in the pure style of Yui, he brings his queen on the opposite side of the board completely, now creating more pin threats. This pawn is hanging. There's a potential pin against the king, and Spassky really has no way to defend it except backing up. Of course, if you were chosen a side to play, you would obviously choose white, though this isn't as easy for Fischer to convert. And one very important element is that you do not want to mistime f5. I would imagine a lot of people here would play f5 at some point when they don't know what to do, like maybe bishop to c4, and then they would still play f5 for some reason, but they need to understand that this isn't really that good now. It is a decent move, but this pass pawn is going nowhere. So Fischer is using all his expertise to use f5 at the correct moment. We have knight to f8. He protects the pawn. F5 still is interesting, of course, because if you capture, actually, now this pawn is free. And now it's interesting, but black's actual best move is queen to g5. This is an interesting move. White is wanting white to take, after which he'll capture here. Not capture there. he will he will actually wait, what? Oh yeah, if you take with the queen, actually, I think you have problems with the queen being weak and vulnerable. So you would rather capture with the knight. And this pawn isn't going anywhere. That's also an important and crucial idea. This pawn isn't going anywhere. So you don't need to rush and take it immediately when you can. Rather, you would want to take it in an advantageous way and not have make I mean not have black not give white any yeah compensation. So f5 is mistimed, so knight to f8, b3. Fischer is just waiting for a moment where Spassky messes up, and we have a5. This is not such a good move, and now is the best time. He's been preparing this move, f5, and now he has a raging attack. ef5. I don't think you need to take. I would rather just wait. Stockfish agrees with me too. This queen to g5 idea is actually, I think, pretty vital. Though you can probably just play a waiting move like a4 or something. So we have, he took instead, rook takes f5, knight to h7. Spassky is going to try to block the pawn at all costs, but he's not going to be making any progress. Now he doubles on the Fischer doubles on the f file. Now he is threatening rook to f7 and queen to g3, and this is actually kind of mate. Queen to d8, queen to g3. He's gonna play rook to f7 next, but we have rook to e7. If you play rook to f7 now, there is simply knight to g5 saving the day. So he's gonna wait for this move and instead plays a waiting move, sort of. h4. Now this prevents knight to g5. So now rook to f7 is a viable threat. Rook b to b7. Spassky is trying to cover all this diagonal, but he is also opening up this file for the queen to get forked on. And if he moves the queen, there is still this move and like queen to d3 check. For example, say he just plays a waiting move. This loses the game actually. It's literally mate. Because Bob Bob so basically and there is mate. So basically Spassky is going to reach his inevitable because queen to f2 is going to happen or queen to g3 and this f file is going to be completely run over. There's going to be mate and all sorts of stuff. Instead, Fischer plays this questionable move e6. He's really fixated on this idea, which is kind of tunnel vision. I don't think this is such a good idea, but it's still fine. It's not losing or anything. He's just being a bit naive. Rook b to c7, queen to e5. He's still playing it slow. He opened up the e5 diagonal, so he's going to try to do something here. Not sure exactly what. Queen to e8, a4. He's just really like waiting for some reason. Queen to d8, rook 1 to f2. Basically, Spassky can't do anything. If he moves any piece, he's going to lose. He literally can't move this rook. So he's going to have to just move this rook or queen. So it's just a moment until Spassky has to make a move. So Fischer is playing it slow and is preparing mate on h7 and is threatening this check because there's mate. So he has to move his knight, but this is fatal. Take, he sacrifices the rook. I wouldn't say it's a sacrifice. It's pretty easy to see, and there is eventually. This is so unneeded. You can just play here probably, but he just plays here and queen to f4, and there is absolutely no way to prevent rook to f8, the loss of the queen and bishop to d3, or rook to f8 and queen to f5. Checkmate. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm starting a series about Bobby Fischer games. If you want to check my other videos out, link in description. Like and subscribe, other YouTuber things. See you later, and see you later.